as the receiver, right? Like, tap into this. Like, is this a fuck yes for me right now or not? Because things can shift, right? That's the thing. I think it's also really important to be able to tap into your body and actually feel for it if this is a yes or a no. And giving the receiver that opportunity to do so can be so yummy, because if they're a fuck yes, they're going to be so open to receiving. They're going to be in the experience. They're going to be like, yeah, like this is fucking awesome, right? Like you're going to get into it with your energy, your body. You're going to be excited about it.
Welcome to Honey Do Me, a podcast that goes into the bedroom and beyond, hosted by Emma Norman
and Cass Anderson. Here at Honey Do Me, we don't have all the answers, so we chat with experts, educators, and badass changemakers to get them.
We are here to remind our listeners and ourselves that what we're going through is normal, that we are worthy of love and pleasure,
and that we are all in this together. So tell us, honey, how do you do you?
Sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
put it in my mouth.
Yeah.
I said my motherfucking mouth. Ha.
That's Emma's favorite song. That's her go-to karaoke.
It is a song that I got grounded for in middle school.
Yes.
So that's cool. I thought it would be funny to sing on a road trip.
Serenade your family.
It was my entire family. Just a spoiler, it wasn't funny, and I was grounded for 2 weeks.
Spoiler, it was funny, but you were grounded for 2 weeks.
So it's kind of a really fun, did it pay off,
Yeah.
risk reward type of thing.
A double-edged sword, so to speak.
if you will. But it relates to today.
Yeah, because today we're talking about putting dicks in your mouth.
Yep. Sure are.
The good old blowy.
The good old blowy.
My go-to. Not really. I have a small mouth, which I talk about.
Which we get into, don't worry.
But, tips. But today on the podcast, we have the amazing Azaria Menezes. So she is a sex and relationship coach and the pussy fairy. But today, as we already said, we're talking about the D.
The D.
And putting it in your mouth.
And put it in that thing in your mouth.
Put it in my mouth. I've never heard that song except for when you played it for
look
me.
it up.
So.
Yeah, it's a good song.
If we wouldn't get sued, we would have that be the music for this episode. But
alas, we would.
Yeah.
No. Well, if you've ever had questions, concerns, reservations about putting a dick in your mouth, sucking one, blowing one, this is so aggressive. But I'm just here to tell you that you will find safety in Azaria.
Yes. So it was not the episode that
No.
we expected, to be honest. I think we expected a little bit more of a cum guzzling episode. But we got something so beautiful. So
Yeah.
Azaria talks a lot about how to find pleasure in giving blowjobs, which I thought was amazing because it's not something that we normally talk about. She talked about the full spectrum of tips and tricks as well, but we focused a lot on feeling good doing it,
Right.
Which is something that I've definitely struggled with. I've never thought of blowjobs as what
This
I
is
want to
about the
do for
giver.
myself today.
Yeah.
You know what my self-care today is
Self-care
going to be.
routine.
I'm going to give him a blowjob. I'm going to give them a blowjob.
Right. Do my skin routine and then give someone a blowjob. That's never been in my routine.
Mm-mm.
And I love that we focused on that because I was like, whoa. And I had so many more questions.
Yes.
And then it was so many more answers in a whole different sexuality realm that we could open up with experiencing pleasure, which is what this is all about.
Exactly. It's all about the pleasure, baby.
All about the P.
The P
all
and the
about
D.
the P today. The P is for penis too.
Oh, yeah.
So
Penis, dick, schlong, dong.
let's see how many more you guys can think of and let us know.
So I was watching SNL, which is a new thing for me. I don't normally watch it, but then Pete Davidson is on it, so I started watching it.
Of course.
They were making fun of a politician, and have you heard milk lemonade around the corner fudge is made?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this person said, chest big and hairy like King Kong, a crack in the back, 2 balls and a dong.
Oh my God. So is that the title of our episode?
So welcome to episode whatever of Honey
Whatever
Do
I
Me.
just said. Yeah. Fucking love it. Anyway,
So-
well, we'll see you on the other side.
Sit with that. Chew on that. No, maybe don't. Spit it out.
Suck on that?
We'll talk about spitting.
This is a lot.
Okay. We'll
Bye.
see you soon. Bye.
Well, my name is Azaria Menezes, and I am a sex and relationship coach. I work with tons of amazing clients, lots of moms, women, couples, and I'm just here to help them feel really connected in their sex life, increase that like sensual spark that they have with themselves and with their body and with their relationship and in their sexuality. And I just want to bring more joy and empowerment and connection and like sexiness back into pleasure, back into the bedroom, back into their life so that they can show up as better parents, better humans, better coworkers, better lovers. Yeah, that's what I do.
It's such like a great dynamic because that's so true. All of those things help us show up better in the world and like be completely ourselves. And so it's the Lord's work, people who really help us find that in ourselves.
Come to my church.
Absolutely.
How did you get into all this work? Like, where did this start for you?
Yeah, I've been working with sexuality for so many years, and it's always been such an interest for me. I grew up with a mom who was always super open about sexuality, and I was just a very curious child, always super curious about the body, always super curious about how everything works. And she was like, you know what, go look it up. Like, here's the lexicon, here's some books, let's go to the library, and then you just look it up. And I started like really geeking out on all of this stuff. And just even in my friends group, they would always ask me because I had all the cool like, tips, which are now definitely cringeworthy when I look back. I'm like, I was definitely dishing out the wrong advice, but here we are, right? There's always room for improvement.
Exactly. That's so awesome that your mom was so positive and like helped give you all those resources to find what you wanted to learn about.
Yes, I think that's a really important part of just being able to empower your children to educate themselves and figure out the right answers, and also just encourage them to explore that, right? Because it's sexuality is such a natural part of growing up. It's such a natural part of development. Even things like self-pleasure, all of these things are so normal. And I think there really needs to be more empowerment and encouragement to just educate yourself and just explore, right?
100%.
Absolutely. And I think like we naturally look for those answers. So whether or not our parents are going to be supportive, we are going to look for the answers to our questions. So I think that support really determines whether it's going to be like positive, accurate information or like based in porn.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes sense. And so you mentioned wrong information, and I want to mention, since we're going to be talking about blowjobs, my first experience learning about blowjobs was at like a 7th grade sleepover, and my friend was like, so you guys know what BJs are, right? And we're like, no. And I felt so stupid for not knowing. She's like, it's blowing and sucking at the same time on a penis. And it's just like, I don't even know if that's humanly possible.
Like, I can't physically do it.
I felt so inferior. I was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. I was like practicing on like my fingers. I was like, it's impossible to do both of those things at the same time. I will never be able to give a blowjob. And so it's just silly how that misinformation can start so young.
It does. It snowballs, and then you're like, what the fuck is
Yeah.
happening here?
Yeah.
Well, we'll just get into logistics.
Yeah.
We like to just take it all the way through. So from the very beginning, let's start with initiation, which sounds like uninitiation, but I really mean initiating a blowjob. What are some sexy ways to initiate a blowjob, and some sexy ways for somebody with a penis to ask for a blowjob?
Yeah. So the sexiest thing is consent, obviously, right? Consent. Like, just ask. I really think a lot of people, like, we need to practice consent a lot more, because it's something that is just like, there's this thing where you like expect it, but then you don't want to ask. And I think there just needs to be more communication about sex. Like, if we're having sex, if we're doing all of these things, like, we need to talk about it and we need to practice consent. And it needs to be like more of a common thing that we do even in relationships, right? And I think that is probably the most important thing. And if you have a container where you've already discussed the things that you like, you've had communication around what is okay for you and what isn't, and in what context you might like a surprise and in what not, right? Like it's communication is so important to be able to talk about these things beforehand, right? Or discuss at least like, okay, if I'm in this situation, it's totally cool for you to surprise me. So consent is the basis of everything, right? So
100%.
asking is a really great way to do it, or even discussing it beforehand. Like, would it be okay if I give you a blowy in the middle of the night or wake you up in the morning? Or like, do you like those kind of surprises, right? And if they say yes, then right, that's something that you can do. Or just generally asking. There's nothing unsexy about like if somebody was like, can I give you head? I'd be like, fuck yeah. Please. Like
Please
that
do.
is sexy, right? Like it's nice to be able to give that permission. And for the person who's asking, like they're going to feel really good about the yes.
We've been talking more and more about like how important and how sexy communication can be. Like I am someone who gets emotionally turned on. So feeling like someone is taking my emotions in consideration before they like physically want to be intimate with me, that is so sexy to me. So yes, having
It's
those
so
conversations and being like, can I do this? Can I surprise you? And like, so we don't have to talk about it right before, but just like now I have your consent that that's something you'd be interested in. So important and can be so sexy.
Totally. And it gives you time to really, as the receiver, right? Like tap into this. Like, is this a fuck yes for me right now or not? Because things can shift, right?
Right.
Like that's the thing. I think it's also really important to be able to tap into your body and actually feel for it if this is a yes or a no. And giving the receiver that opportunity to do so can be so yummy, because if they're a fuck yes, they're going to be so open to receiving. They're going to be in the experience. They're going to be like, yeah, like this is fucking awesome, right? Like you're going to get into it with your energy, your body. You're going to be excited about it. And if it's like a no or maybe, how much are you really going to enjoy that? Because you're feeling like, oh, I feel bad if I say no. And it's just going to be one of those situations where nobody's really getting the benefit out of it, right? So communication is really sexy and hot.
Do you work with couples and singles when you talk with people about this stuff?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I work with couples and singles.
So do you ever talk to like people who are dating then and like wanting more information on blowjobs, like how to do it, how to go down, and like how to start, you know, being comfortable in that type of sexuality? Is that what people who are individuals come like looking for?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the times people come to me with these surface questions where actually it's like, what are actually the barriers within me that are making me feel like blocked in my sexuality, right? Like what's the actual thing underneath? Like where is all of this conditioning? Where are these beliefs coming from? Where are all these stories coming from that I can actually untangle so I can feel really authentic and free in my body when I'm having sex or when I'm approaching my partner, or how to really feel confident in my yeses and my nos so that I can show up in the bedroom and claim my desires and support my partner to claim their desires and ask them, right? And really practice that communication. So it's like, yes, people come to me with all these like cute, fun little like questions, but like
the main point is getting to like
there's so much more to it, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Because you do have to be confident and comfortable in your own like presence of like, I can ask for what I want and like be confident in like claiming it.
Because even if you have like the skills, or like you're like, okay, I know how to give a blowjob, like this is the first step, then the second step. If you're not feeling like comfortable and good in that situation, like, I don't think all the steps in the world could help you.
Right.
And that's the thing, right? Like, what does confidence mean for you? What does acceptance for your body mean, right? Like, what does it mean to create safety in the bedroom for you? What does it look like to really stand behind your desires and your yeses and nos, and like learn how to regulate your nervous system in this, right? And how to get out of your head and into your body. Like, what does it mean for you to connect with your pussy? Or what does it mean for you to connect with your penis or your genitals, right? Like, what does that look like for you? So I definitely think that there's so much more to confidence and acceptance, and like, because I think we think it's easy, but like there's always shit underneath, right? There's always stuff that's holding us back, whether it's like not feeling like super free in the bedroom, or not feeling actually that comfortable in our bodies, or not even knowing what we want in the bedroom. how can we make this a co-creation in the bedroom? How can we look at the bedroom like our like sexual playground rather than like this thing where I have to perform for you and you have to perform for me and I have to look like a porn star and I have to please you because of all this patriarchal bullshit. Like, fuck that. It is time to play and explore and be silly. And like, sex is messy. It's messy and it's awkward and it's fun. And like, really being able to embrace that means that you have to be able to embrace that within your own self, in your own body, with self-pleasure as well. And just feeling like you are giving yourself a full fuck yes. And you're creating safety in your body. And you're feeling really good and you're feeling connected with your breath and your movement and yourself. And that's when you can start really bringing presence into the bedroom. And that's when you're really going to like amp up that confidence level.
So I feel like another thing that can really hold us back confidence wise is feeling like people aren't liking what they're seeing or smelling. So what's like a good preparation tool for like the person that's receiving a blowjob, like to kind of be totally confident, like hygiene wise, how should they start like preparing so that doesn't have to be in their head as well?
Totally. So, I mean, we have bodies, right? There's going to be smells, there's going to be tastes, and we all have natural ways of smelling, and there's always going to be some type of taste involved, right? Like skin, humans.
Your skin will taste like skin.
But
Ew, that sounded like
you've tasted a lot of skin.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's move past that comment.
That's why we're not live.
Well, there is ways, of course, that you can support your partner and support yourself to feel really good. I would just recommend a good old shower with some mild soap, right? Really getting into all of the corners and the grooves and everything, just making sure if you are uncircumcised, really washing around the head of the penis as well. Like just wash all of it, your balls, wash the area in between your balls and the anus, so the perineums. You really want to get like everything clean and feeling really good, right?
Like maybe don't come right from the gym and ask for a blowjob. Just like take the receipt or the giver into consideration of like what would smell and be perfect for them.
What would make this fun for them too?
Yeah.
And you know what? Some people are totally cool with that. So you can just ask.
Yeah, that's true. That I guess it all can come back to
right?
that conversation for sure.
Yes, and you can also integrate the whole thing into the shower. You can both get into the shower together. You can get all lathered up and you can help your partner clean their penis and then you can start the blowjob in the shower. Right?
That's a great
tip. There's that too. Like, it's perfect. You can come out both squeaky clean.
Yeah. You go do dirty stuff and you both come out clean. I love that.
Exactly.
I know that for me, with sex, like it can be easy for me to feel disconnected based on position. So like for me, doggy style just like doesn't feel for me because I just feel like really far away and it just feels like it's not my thing. I know people who it's like their main thing and they love it and that's awesome. It's not mine. And so I'm wondering in terms of like positioning for blowjobs, are there ways to like make it especially intimate or like just feel a lot closer? Because really when I picture it, it's just like either you're like sitting and I'm on my knees or like, I don't know.
Yes.
Because also just my mouth and my jaw and the angles, it just turns into a bit of a
Yes, that's why they literally call it a job. It's there's like so many things you're doing, right? And I think just a way to make you feel really connected is being relaxed and present in your own body and really approaching it as something to really connect the both of you. Right? If you're coming from a place of service and pleasure and enjoyment with your blowjobs and you're like, yes, like how can I make this actually feel really, really good for me? Because I think there's a whole narrative around like blowjobs being this thing that we have to do. And like, I don't know, in movies a long time ago, you can see like people with penises pressing down their partner's head to like, you know, it has like a little bit of a weird stigma to it. And I think just being able to change the energy and like the narrative around like, how can I make this blowjob something for me? Because it should be something pleasurable for you as well. We don't want to push our body beyond its limits, right? We don't want to do things that just don't feel good in our bodies or have this like murky, weird energy to it. Right? You want to come to a blowjob feeling really turned on and feeling really good. So maybe if it helps you feel connected first, like you can come to orgasm first and you can then like be in that energy of like, yes, like I want to serve you and I'm going to make this feel really good for myself. And the way that you can connect with yourself during a blowjob is connect with your body. Like you can move your body, right? You can connect with how this is feeling in your body. You can really even imagine that your partner's penis is actually like your lover and you're giving them like the best, like sloppy, most delicious, like dirty kiss ever, right? Like you can really shift into your like inner slut who just really fucking loves to like take all of this and enjoy giving a blowjob. Like this is just for you, actually. Right. This has nothing to do with the person receiving. And when you're connected with yourself, it's like you feel that connection with the penis. You feel that connection with your lover, right? And you're right there with them. So that's something that you can do to feel really connected. Position wise, sometimes it's really nice to be able to look your partner in the eyes while you're giving a blowjob, right? That's something that can like give you that connection, right? It's just like an instant connection. Like I'm here with you and I'm taking all of you and this is really yummy for me and I'm enjoying myself, right? Like you want to get in touch with that authentic enjoyment because we want to move away from like the performance shit from porn. Like that is not real. Yeah. That's just all fake. You want to be authentic in how you're enjoying yourself, right? And when your partner can see that you're actually having fun and you're showing up really connecting and you're loving it, then that's something that they're going to absolutely go wild for and love too, right? I think it's also really nice to be able to turn your back towards them while you're sitting beside them. They have a really great view of your ass. And you can just pay all of the attention to the penis, right? Okay. So that's something that is really, really yummy. I think most of the time when people give blowjobs, their partner's laying flat on their back. And that is something where the penis is literally going directly at the back of your throat. If you have a little bit of a gag reflex, I would recommend maybe trying a couple of other positions that have more of a like where your throat is actually straighter so that the penis can go a little bit further in if that's something that you want to do, if that's something that feels good for you and you're not pushing your body's limits. So I would definitely recommend that. But I think just eye contact and enjoying the blowjob yourself, that's how you're really going to feel connected to your partner. That's how you're really going to feel connected to yourself. And you're going to get a lot out of it, right?
Totally. Well, I'm glad you brought up the gag reflex thing because I was going to ask, like, what are some good ways to, like, either have shallow penetration in your throat or if you're, like, seeking deeper penetration? Because, yeah, the only position that I think of is either them lying straight on their back or the standing up version of that, which is they're standing straight up and I'm just kneeling.
It's literally going straight into the back of your
throat. So I have no idea how else to, like, formulate my body if I want to change that like penetration level.
Yes. So I think there's also like a huge thing with deep throating just because of the porn industry, right? Like you have to get the whole thing in there, but like actually no, it can feel just as good if you are sucking and playing with the tip and using your hands at the base of the penis, right? Like always use your hands. You don't have to go, you don't have to put the whole thing in your throat. Like if you want to, definitely you can go ahead. And the best way to do that is to actually be relaxed in your body. Relax your jaw. You can do some like jaw massage before. I think a lot of the time we hold a lot of tension in our jaws. And it's not actually relaxed, especially when we're trying to overextend our mouths. We just kind of move into that tension space again. So just gently keeping the lips open and gently imagine yourself like relaxing your jaw and really opening your throat up. You can really visualize that. And with time, you can even just practice this at home, right? You can practice this on a dildo. You can practice with your fingers. You can do some visualizations on just being able to relax your throat and relax your jaw a little bit. And that's truly the key. I know there's like a lot of tricks where you're like, hold your thumb or like flick your forehead and like.
I've never heard that one.
I don't know. You really want to be doing that all the time? Like,
no.
It's really about feeling relaxed, approaching it with an open like body, open mouth, and just enjoying how you're showing up with this blowjob and like not pushing yourself, right? If that doesn't feel good for you and you don't want to be like egging all over the place, like that's not how you want to be showing up, because it's not going to be pleasurable for you. So if you're able to do that, that's amazing. And if not, use your hands. Concentrate on the tip of the penis. That's where so many of the delicious, yummy, sensitive, like electric nerve endings are. You want to focus on that spot, like focus on the top, on the tip. You can swirl your tongue around the tip of the penis and you can lick the frenulum, which is on the underside of the penis, while you use your hands moving up and down. You can use one hand. You can just keep one hand on the base of the penis and go as far as you can and just rhythmically work your hands, right? That's also not the only place to stimulate. You can play with the perineum. You can explore that area if that's something that they consent to and that they love. You can integrate the balls. You can play with the anus. There's a really delicious, special, yummy spot in the anus. If you're a penis owner, like... that can make a blowjob go from like 5 to 7,000. So, you know, there's a stigma around that for a lot of men, but I think it's such a beautiful, exquisite, sensual area that needs to be explored a little bit more, because that can just really amplify those feelings. And there's so many yummy nerve endings in the anus, and yeah, so
yummy anus nerve endings. Love it.
That brought up 2 questions for me. The first one, I feel like you kind of answered it, but for me, I have a small mouth, and dentists have commented on it often, and my jaw gets very sore very easily. So it's like, it doesn't take long before I'm like in a lot of pain.
Yes.
So am I just trying to like take in too much? Like, should I just stick to the tip and then use these on the ends of my arms?
Yeah.
Or is there any like warm up you can do? Any massaging?
Like some jaw yoga.
Yeah.
Well, you can definitely start with actually just massaging your jaw and really practicing that relaxation technique. But honestly, if it's like any type of pain is coming up for you, or you're getting really uncomfortable, there is no obligation to do that. There's not really a huge difference between your mouth going all the way down to the base of the penis or your hands moving up and down. Like that feels amazing as well. I mean, I don't have a penis, but obviously
I can imagine
the feedback that I've gotten. Right? It's totally great to use your hands as well. Like use your hands. They're going to be your biggest help in this, and just focus on the tip of your penis. You don't even have to open your mouth that wide, right? Like you can just play with placing your lips over the penis and then gently bringing them down and up, right? Like you don't even have to overextend your jaw that much. And the point of this is for you to feel pleasure. Like how can I give a blowjob so that I can still feel pleasure in this, right? Like we can't forget about ourselves. Just because it's like we're giving our partners a blowjob, we don't want to be like overextending ourselves and injuring ourselves or just like feeling like it's really uncomfortable just in service of our partner's pleasure. Like that's not really the way it works. This has to be like a co-creation. It has to feel really good for you both, right? Like, I mean, if you're just being lazy and you're like, like you know, there's like a certain degree that if you've decided to, you know, really choose to commit to this and go in for a blowjob, then yes, like do what feels good for you, right? And when it doesn't feel good anymore and it's not a fuck yes in your body, like you should also be constantly checking in with your body. Like, is this still a fuck yes for me? Like, am I still coming from this energy of like, yes, I really want to continue to do this. I really love this. I'm really serving my partner. Like, this is the only dick in the world. Like, you still want to be in that energy, right?
Absolutely.
As soon as that changes, don't feel bad about it. Like you can still use your hands. You can make sure to move your hands around their body. You can whisper sexy things while you use your hands, right? There's so many ways to actually just get creative. Like we need to drop the pressure of performance and goals, right? Like I have this goal to get it all the way down my throat, or like I have to suck your dick until you come, or right? Like we put all these goals on sex, and I think a lot of the times it can just take away from the pleasure aspect, and it can take away from the adventure, and it can take away from all of these sensations that we are closing our body off with, right? And then we come out not feeling good, or being like, oh, the next time it happens, it's like a chore. We don't want to be approaching sex like it's a chore, right? Like it happens, obviously. Like, and once you get into it, it's nice. But you really want to be able to feel good about the blowjobs that you're giving. You want to feel good in your body. You want to feel like you're honoring your body, because that's actually what creates more attention in the long run, right? Your body's going to remember that moment. Your brain's going to be like, okay, I'm saving this sensation because the last time I gave a blowjob, my jaw hurt. And it's just going to repeat that story over and over again. And you're just going to move more attention in your body. And eventually you might even feel resentful to giving blowjobs at all, or like you just don't want to get them. And you're like, you know what, this isn't really my thing, right? So the more we don't listen and honor our bodies, the more tension that builds up. And then that's how these things happen, like blocks in the bedroom, and like just things and stories and things that we actually just invited into it because we weren't honoring and listening to our bodies.
I
Right?
love that
Beautiful.
reframing. I think we really don't look at blowjobs specifically from a like, what can the giver be getting out of this?
Right.
Like, how can this be pleasurable for both people involved? And I also think that like we don't talk about when things hurt enough, because I think that pain in the bedroom is often like normalized specifically for like femme people, because it's like, oh yeah, that just hurts, and then we don't talk about it, and then it's just like in my head it like becomes this normal thing of like, yeah, that's just a thing that hurts, or that's just the thing that I like push myself through. So I think talking about it, like I've definitely had like revelations doing this, like this episode, and then the podcast overall, where it's like, oh, that's not supposed to feel bad. Like that's actually supposed to feel good. And I'm like, how could I not know that? Like my body was like screaming at me, like, stop.
Yeah.
That's conditioning though, right? Like if you look at how women have been treated over the past ever, really, like we're just starting to really scratch the surface of talking about these topics and really being able to stand in our desires and claim our truest selves in the bedroom and in life, right? Like it's just women's pleasure, it hadn't been a priority. If you even think about 50 years ago, right? Like women's pleasure was not really in the forefront. It was just like, okay, we'll focus on penis owners' pleasure and how penis owners come to orgasm, right? Like women's orgasm isn't really that important, or it's just like something that nobody talks about. And I think that's where that conditioning really can come from, is just not being able to claim what you want in the bedroom and give that permission to say yes to your pleasure, and owning your sexuality in this and owning your experience as well, so that there's more of like a balanced dynamic in the bedroom, right? And I think it's so important to be able to address this and to talk about these things, because if you're experiencing any type of pain in the bedroom, or you're feeling any type of resistance, like the body saves this, and the body just feels it over and over and over and over again. And eventually your body can shut down. And then you can feel really, really alone and isolated, because you don't think that anybody is experiencing the same things. And then when you start talking to people, they're like, oh yeah, me too. And you're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, why are we not all talking about this? And how do we like fix this, right? So really just being able to actually tune into your own sexuality and your empowerment, and saying yes to what feels good for you. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. Simple as that. That's just like, that's
just
it.
how things go.
The clearest indicator.
No, absolutely. I love this like switch of narrative around this activity because it so often is around how do we give the most pleasure that we can, rather than how do we make this a joint pleasurable experience. So I'm so glad that we're also touching on all of this stuff.
Yeah, we are getting rid of the orgasm gap. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Let's get that out of here.
I had a clarification question because I'm a very like detail oriented person. When we were talking about positions, you mentioned like sitting next to each other and then like leaning over. Was that right?
Yeah, so if your partner is laying on the bed, you can sit beside them, like with your
Okay.
body and your butt face towards their face.
Got it.
And then you just slide over a little bit and you can have great access to the penis. So you're just reversing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That
really
clicks
good.
for me.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a great position.
Right.
The other thing that you mentioned was like eye contact, because that was something that I had like a question about going into this. Like, should I be looking at them? Like,
Right.
and what position would be good for looking at them? I guess.
Well, that's not the position that I just obviously talked about. That's going to be a little awkward for your neck.
Yeah. Like a side stare.
Might make it a little creepy. We're not bringing it
Right out of the corner of your eye. Just not that one.
But of course, if your partner is laying down and you're in between their legs, right?
Okay.
Or if they're sitting on the edge of the bed and you're on your knees, just any way that it feels good on your neck, right? Like you don't want to be compromising your neck either, just to like,
Yeah.
but it's okay to switch positions and to try new things out. I think sometimes we think that once we've started a position, like it has to be so rigid because we have to like really stay there all the way until our partner has a climax, right? But like we can invite a little bit more spaciousness into this, and this can actually draw the sex out, right? Like it can make this it can make it really long and really nice, and you can take your time. Like I think people feel like they need to rush into this all the time, and like it's like running a race, and it's like how fast can I jerk and how like deep can I get this penis into my throat to like get my partner over the finish line as quick as possible. But like it's okay to just take your time and to see like, hey, like let's just try this. And sometimes it doesn't work out and it just ends up being like a really funny thing. And like it's okay to bring like silliness into it. And I think sometimes we take sex so seriously, and that really brings in the overthinking and that brings in the perfectionism, because we have been conditioned with so much of this stuff in the media, right? In porn, like it's just always has to be perfect. So really just inviting more spaciousness into it and like looking like, hey, like could we try this? Maybe this feels really good. And that's actually how you're going to find out like new positions that feel good for you, or like explore new areas or erogenous zones, right? Or find something that you didn't even know was possible. Like the world is your oyster. So.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
You mentioned earlier too a lot of like really fun ways to start exploring while you're giving blowjobs, like with the balls or the butt zone and like stroke and rhythm. So what are some really like sensual ways that we can enjoy like a stroke with our mouth? Like what are some good like rhythms that we can do that are enjoyable for us and also like pleasurable for the person that's receiving?
Yeah. So there's lots of ways you can integrate that. I mean, you can even bring toys into this, right? You can use toys while you're giving a blowjob to like really get you into it. That's something that is really, really amazing to do. You can use your hands to actually stroke your body and give like with one hand, touch your skin while you're giving a blowjob. And then you can also ask your partner to stroke your hair or stroke your skin while you're doing that. Like you can use all of these ways to actually create even more connection, right? It doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to suck your penis and you're just going to lay there and like starfish it out. Even though like starfish pose, it's just so good sometimes, but like
it's very relaxing.
Really right? It's also just really good to connect and explore their body with your hands. Maybe even just exploring their body with your hands is going to give you turn on, right? Like feeling them get turned on even more is almost just as good as turning yourself on, right? Like it's one of those things where you can really look at exploring, like, how can I make this feel good for myself? Maybe I can touch myself while I give a blowjob with one hand, or maybe I can actually just focus on making sounds while I'm giving a blowjob, because sounding is something that can really get you into your body, right? Like this lets your body know that you are connected with it. And if you integrate like a little bit of movement, You can imagine like moving your sexual energy, or you can just even like close your eyes and connect with your pussy. How often do we connect with our pussies during a blowjob, right? If you're a pussy owner, like imagine connecting with your pussy and like waking her up, like, hey girl, I see
What's
you.
up?
Like,
I still know you're there. Yeah.
Right? Even just doing some light hip circles while you're giving a blowjob, or while you're using your hands to rhythmically move up and down. And maybe you even have his balls in your mouth, right? Like, that's something that you can totally do if that feels good for you. Just try and work your way into your own rhythm and just explore what feels good for you. Because most of the time, if it's feeling really good for you and you're really into it, most of the time, if you're not like scraping your teeth along it feels good, right? And if it doesn't feel good, it's really important to keep that communication line open and just like trust that your partner is going to let you know, or check in with them. Like, is this pressure good for you? Do you like the speed of this? Do you want me to increase the rhythm? Like, make this a co-creation, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love all of those suggestions. I'm wondering, for people who maybe don't have as much experience and want a few tools to go in with, like, how can you actually like move your mouth and your tongue? Like, is it really just like an up and down and you can leave your tongue flat? You talked about like almost like you're giving like a really like sloppy kiss. And I love that description. Could you go a little bit more into like how to actually like move those parts?
Of course. So there's so many different ways to do this. So you can make sure that your tongue is flat, and you can really just circle your tongue around the penis. It's more of like moving your mouth up and down and the rhythm of your tongue, right? You can play with pressure on your lips as well, like pressing your lips down a little tighter and loosening them a little bit. You can swirl your tongue around the frenulum. That's a really, really sensitive, like delicious spot that can definitely drive somebody super, super wild.
What exactly is that spot again? Did you say?
It's shaped like a little V. It's a spot right underneath the underside of the penis, and it's the skin that connects.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Love that.
So you can use your tongue on that. It's just at the underside of your penis, underside of their penis. And you can use your tongue to swirl around the tip of the head as well. That's something that feels really good. Most of the nerve endings are there, right? So you really want to like focus on that spot. And even just move your hands up and down while you're doing that. You don't have to move them super fast. You can move them as slow as you want. You can play with the pressure with your hands as well. What really feels good is also using both hands. So actually like alternating them up and down while you suck. That's a little bit complicated if you're not used to it.
It's a lot of moving parts.
It's a lot of moving parts. That's fair.
So you can practice. You can practice on a dildo. You can practice on a toy, right? Like, these are things that you can explore, like with a rhythm and really learning to get into your flow. And just focusing on the tip. That's like something really, really good that you can move with your tongue. You can move your tongue around. You can move it into figure eights. You can slowly, when you're taking your mouth off, you can slowly move your mouth off and then slowly move it back on. Sometimes it feels really good to come completely off when you're giving a blowjob and put your lips back on. Some people prefer just to stay on the head of the penis. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can play around with it, but get creative.
Yeah.
Get really creative. Usually the teeth thing, I know a lot of people worry about the whole teeth thing, but if your mouth is open and you're really focusing on using your lips, then your teeth kind of stay in the background. And
that makes sense.
Like, you can use your teeth intentionally, right? That's something that you can do as well. That could feel interesting and give like a little bit of like an edge to it.
Like, are you gonna bite my dick off, or are you just playing around? I don't know.
I've got the power.
Am I hungry? Like, do I want a snack?
That's so funny.
No, but yeah, you can definitely use your teeth if it's like intentional and it's like a sensual thing, and you're maybe making eye contact, and you can like really like get into that primal energy if that's what you're wanting to bring into it. But of course, very, 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 very gentle and barely touching, right? But mostly you're going to be focused on using your lips, right? And playing with the pressure on your lips while you move your mouth up and down, while you work with your hands. You can even after you, like while you're sucking and you're moving your hands, you can even take a break. Like if your jaw hurts, you can really use your hands to play with the tip of the penis as well and play with that and like really get lots of lube. Like the wetter, the better. Get the lube, get the oil, whatever you're using, right? And just really explore what type of moves feel good because like most of the time that sensation at the tip of the penis can be really, really sensitive, right? So a lot of people forget that it's like the head of the penis where there's so many yummy nerve endings and use other areas, use other erogenous zones to explore. Like you can suck the balls, you can do figure eights on them. You don't have to like put both of them in your mouth.
That was my next question. Yeah.
That is great. And like
Chipmunk.
Yeah.
no, maybe don't do like the eye contact and then
Just
Don't look at them
everything bulging.
sweating, your face is red, not breathing.
unless you're doing like some type of like animal role play, then that would be really great to integrate. But
That's so funny.
yeah, so you can do one at a time, right? And that's something I think a lot of people are just scared about because it's like such a sensitive thing, right? So you're like, oh, like I don't know if this feels good or not, but just ask, communicate. Like, does this feel good when I do figure eights around both of your balls? Like, does it feel good when I suck on one of your balls, right? Like, you can really use communication to your greatest advantage because every person is different, right? Like the way that all of our nerve endings are, they're all kind of placed in different areas. Like we have general erogenous zones and things that could feel good, but a lot of things that feel good to one person don't feel good to another, right? So it's about exploring and really seeing what the other person loves and where their sensitive and sweet spots are and seeing how you can really like get into that energy of asking them to explore, like explore with me. Like, do you like this? Is this something really good for you? Right?
Perfect. And then you mentioned using lube when you're like using your hands. So do you have to be careful of when you go back with your mouth if there's still lube? Like, are you allowed to ingest lube?
I think so.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you can totally,
Okay. It's like medical question. Are we allowed to just lick that?
I mean, it depends on the lube because I am not a medical doctor. So.
Right. Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
the ingredients, but for the most part, lube is meant to
be played with
and be enjoyed. There's like lots of different types of flavored lubes as well, right? If that's
that's true. That's right.
Well. So yeah,
Okay.
just use lots of lube because lube is your greatest friend.
And find one you like the taste of.
Yeah.
Like you don't have that much spit in your mouth.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if
You only
you're
have
not
so much.
drinking enough water, if you're not like
Right.
doing all the things, like you just might not have that like resource. Right? And that's just going to make things a little bit more smoother and it's going to feel really good for you because you're going to have that smooth experience and there's no pressure to like
Yeah.
that, like bit, you know,
Sucking it
So
from
that's
the
a
back
lot
of your
work too.
cheeks. Yeah. So speaking of smooth, how do you make the taking in of the balls smooth? Like if you wanted to like go down and like suck on one or both, do you like pull like or do you like feed them into your mouth?
Like spaghetti.
Yeah. Like, what's the best
Like
way?
a vacuum.
Yeah. Like the hose at the end of the vacuum where you just suck it in. What's the best way to collect them and put them in your mouth?
You really are going with the chipmunk.
Right now. This is so good. Well, you can use your hands still, right? Like you can use your hands. There's no thing where you have to like open your mouth as wide as you can and like gulp them into your
Unhinged.
Scoop it with your tongue.
Yeah, you can use your tongue to play around with the balls a little bit, right? Like, and then you can open your mouth and see what it feels like just to take in like a little bit of skin, right? You can see how that feels like in your mouth and how much you can actually take into your mouth, right? Like you can just gently cup them with your hands underneath and just hold them while you suck on them, while you have them in your mouth. Like you don't have to like actually put them in your mouth if that's not something that doesn't feel good to you or your partner. But if it does, right, you can try one at a time. I would recommend trying one first.
That sounds good.
And just gently moving them in towards your mouth and still like really using lots of tongue because tongue can feel really nice and sensitive. You can also If your partner is laying down and you're in between their legs, you can also continue to work your hands, right, on their penis, work your hands around their frenulum, like work your hands around the head of the penis. If that feels really, really good, right, then they're going to have those two sensations at the same time. So there's no really right or wrong here, but just try and communicate with your partner, see what feels good, because everybody, again, has different sensitivities and desires. And like some just might want you to like put it all in your mouth, and your mouth might be really relaxed and open and you have the ability to do that, then right, you can go ahead and do that. But
right,
it's all about communication.
Feeling it
Yeah.
out. Yeah. If we're coming to a close, things that come to a close in a blowjob is finishing. So what are your thoughts on swallowing versus spitting and kind of figuring out what like works for you, and also the stigma around being someone that like is a spitter and like doesn't like come in their mouth? Like, I feel like that's another place that I can get self-conscious. And I think a lot of people like start to overthink, like, oh my God, he's about to finish. I don't really know what to do in this situation. So kind of like talking us through like that last little bit.
Yeah. So the most important thing here is to just discuss it beforehand.
Right.
What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Right. And also let your partner know beforehand. Like, I actually don't really prefer to do this, but this is an alternative way that we can deal with this. Or maybe this is something that you love and you can say like, you know what, if you're feeling like you're going to climax, I'm totally okay with swallowing. I would love to. Right. So that's really something that you want to talk about, is setting your boundaries beforehand. And just looking at ways that you can still feel good in it, right? It really depends on your willingness to do that and how that feels in your body. Like, is it a fuck yes? Is it a no? Is it a maybe? If it's a maybe and you don't know how you're going to be feeling that day, you can just let your partner know, hey, let me know when you're about to climax or when you're close, right? Let me know when you're at like an 8 or a 9. So that I can have time to check in to see if this is something that I want to do, or I can stop sucking and I can continue to use my hands, right? Or if I can just take it out just right before you're going to climax and rub it all over my body, or right, like there's so many options that you can do, but communication is going to be key. And I think that people have different preferences on whether they want to swallow or whether they don't want to swallow. And I think it's just really checking with yourself, where can I do this and do I want to do this? If that's something that you want to do, then you can just let your partner know, and you can kind of find a compromise in that. Like, you don't have to take all of it. You can do some, you can, right? Like it's totally upon preference.
And it doesn't necessarily have to do with like the semen itself, right? Like, I feel like that might be why receivers might be like, oh, like, you don't want to receive that from me. Like, it's just that, I don't know, like that ick factor almost. Like, they think there's something wrong with them. So that's why you wouldn't want to swallow. But it can be like a million reasons, right?
Mine is like the fact,
a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's like, there's a story behind that. There's a narrative behind that, right? But if that's something that you want to do for your partner and they want you to do that, but you're just like not quite sure how to make it more enjoyable for you, right? There's ways that you can play around with it. You can play around with temperature. You can play around with like visualization, right? Like you can actually just feel into your body and like, how could I imagine this to be like really, really delicious and yummy, and like just swallow all of it. If it's like something that is accessible to you, that you can feel like you can shift into that like mindset and like that little bit of enjoyment, but it has to come from like you really wanting to, and you really just sitting in the energy of enjoyment for yourself, right? Like that's where it has to come from. If you're not like, I don't really want to do this, like it just feels a bit intense for me, like I'm going to choke, like there's a lot of elements that come with that, right? So just really checking in with yourself, and maybe just if that's something that you want to do, like how could I actually make this more pleasurable for myself? Maybe I just want a little bit of it, right? Or maybe we want to use some flavored lube and maybe just put it on when you're at an 8 or a 9 and just really like get it all over so that it can just go smoothly down my throat. Like maybe I really want to close my eyes and imagine like sucking it all in and like really connecting with my sexual like energy and my like genitals and my throat and like relaxing and opening up, right? So seeing how you can approach that from your own pleasure And if that's something that you don't want to do, that's totally okay. Just let them know, like, you know what, this totally isn't for me, but let's find a way that we can make this work for the both of us.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we started with the baseline of communication, because everything really does wrap around to that. And it's so important in like your sexual pleasure and exploration. So I love that this all comes back to, you know, the healthy conversations that we need to have really good sex. And I feel like that's just so important to put out there as like, you know, a solid baseline. Is like our communication is so important to enjoyable sex. And that's just like what it is for real. For real.
For real.
Yeah, because for me, coming in my mouth is immediate gagging. And it's not the semen. It's not that. It's the squirt to the back that just triggers me. And it immediately
The
makes
pressure
me want to die.
with which it is released.
Yeah.
It comes out with a force for sure. There's a lot of pressure involved, definitely. And that's something that maybe you can, if swallowing is something that you want to do or love to do, you can just actually tell them, like, let me know when you're about to climax, and then they can start climaxing. And then when the pressure subsided a little bit, like, you can go back in again, right? Like you can use your hands while they're climaxing and while the semen is actually coming out. And then when you're like, okay, I'm going to go in now, that can be less pressure, right? So there's lots of different ways you can actually approach this, but just look at ways that, like, how could this feel good for me? And sometimes there's like a little bit of trial and error, right? Like in exploration, and we have to give ourselves like the permission to figure out what we actually like and how we can make it work for the both of us, and like what works for us. Because what works for you might not work for somebody else, right? And you might want to like use the same tricks and things on another person, but might not be what they like. So just really approaching it as like, this is a whole new thing, and how can we explore even more? Because that's the thing, that's what makes sex boring as well, right? Is if you get so used to your routine and you think you know your partner and you think you know yourself and you know what you like, and it's like you have the routine. We're like, okay, I'm going to use my vibrator, then I'm going to give you a blowjob, then we're going to have sex in and out, and then you're going to come, and then I'm going to
cry. And it'll be done.
Is that your routine?
That we get into, right? Like there's so many routines.
Right.
And it's so important to approach it with like this curiosity. Like, what can we explore that we actually don't know about our bodies? Because we're creatures of habit, and we're so stuck, even in the masturbation routine, right? Like, I know what I like. I'm going to do this move and that move and that move, and then I'm going to climax, and it's going to be great. And I'm going to get up and like go do my shit. But like really taking the time to set intentional exploration time and really be really intentional about how you're approaching a blowjob or a self-pleasure or your sexuality, and taking the time to dissect all of the things that you're doing and seeing like, is this actually serving me?
Yeah.
Right.
Do I actually like this? Like, is this giving me pleasure? How can I look at inviting more pleasure into the bedroom or into the blowjob or into my body while I'm giving a blowjob?
I love all the questions. Question everything.
Question everything and everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've reached the part in our episode where we like to do homework for honeys, where we like to talk about one actionable step that we can all do to start incorporating everything that we talked about today. So, Azaria, would you do the honor of assigning some homework for us?
Yes, I would love to. So I would really love to invite you to explore what can bring you pleasure in the bedroom and what feels good in your body. So looking at things like communication is going to be really important. So have the chat, right? Just stepping over that like little fear and just have the chat. If you're going to have sex, just have the chat and talk about what feels really good for you, where your boundaries are, right? And what they can do to make you feel safe, and what you can do for yourself to make yourself feel safe. And then second of all, really feeling into, how can I make this an experience for me? What would it need to take to make this really enjoyable for me, or for me to get really turned on by doing this, right? Like, how can I make not only my partner feel like their penis is the most important thing in the world, but also like, how can I make my pleasure the most important thing in the world while I'm in service of like this beautiful gift that I'm offering my partner, right? Like, how can I make this yummy for me? If that's like asking for a trade-off, right? Or using like toys, or really just like getting into your breath and into your body and bringing more presence into the blowjob. Or maybe it's just like honoring your body. Just remember to like honor your body. Like, where are my yeses and nos? Where am I actually pushing myself? And I want to invite you to just like dissect what is happening for you during a blowjob. Like, look at, how am I approaching blowjobs right now? How am I approaching sex right now? And how can I shift into this new story of like, how can I make this pleasurable for me? How can I use this as my playgrounds to feel more pleasure? And how can I just create more open communication with my partner?
Beautiful.
Oh, I love it. I was just like absorbing it.
I know.
like
Beautiful homework. It couldn't have been better suited for our entire episode. I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Aw.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
Can you
you.
please tell our listeners where they can continue to connect with you?
Yes. So you can, of course, find me on my website at www.azariamenezes.com. You can find me on Instagram at azaria.menezes. But you know how Instagram is sometimes like sex educators, sex coaches, anything to do with sexuality and intimacy, we get canceled all the time. So find me on my website. I also have a really amazing course on exploring your pussy. So it's called Make Her Purr. And
I love that.
This is actually, I know I'm like talking about blowjobs today, but I'm actually really the pussy fairy. That's my expertise. So exploring your pussy with your partner, if that's something that you guys want to do, you can also find my course on that. And there's lots of ways to work with me. And yeah, just reach out, come say hi, find me on Instagram. I also have a podcast called Getting Intimate. So yeah, just check out my website. You'll find all the information on there.
Perfect. We'll link all of that in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Azaria. This was so much fun.
Oh, so much fun.
I hope you all enjoyed us putting that in your mouth, putting that in your ears, ear to mouth.
And now put it in your mouth.
And now put it, there you go. You always know how to tie what I want to say together, and I appreciate
That's why
that.
we're partners.
I also appreciate Azaria coming on the podcast and giving us such a great conversation about blowjobs and how to enjoy pleasure. And thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in.
We really got like the holistic view of blowjobs. You know what I mean? Which I'm proud to, proud to share with
lobe. Lobe jobs.
Lobe jobs. Yeah, I'm having trouble talking today.
I know. But we did. And I can for sure say that I will approach that practice a lot more centered around me too.
Yes, exactly.
Which I've never have.
Here's the thing. It's all about me.
It is. If you know what?
If
I've learned anything, it's that this world revolves around me, and that's it.
Honestly, the more spiritual I get, the more I realize that like my life is about me and it's not about anyone else.
Oh yeah. So
put a dick in your mouth and it's about you, honey. Woo! On that note, head over to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe to Honey Do Me Podcast for more of this lovely banter.
Lovely.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.